Hi, and welcome to the Love Learns podcast. My name is Dionne Zara, just your average girl wishing to learn more about love and relationships. As a young girl, I always dreamt about my wedding day, and to be fair, I still do sometimes. With many couples around me, I quickly came to realise love isn't as straightforward as the movies make out. So I thought I would have conversations with couples who made it past happily ever after to learn more about love. And when I say love, I don't mean like the movies and fairy tales, but I mean LOVE, learning to be open, vulnerable, and empathetic. So if you're ready to learn, unlearn, and discover love through couples, you're in the right place. Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of Love Learns. We're back again with another Love is Blind episode. Thanks so much for your patience, guys. I know I've been a little bit unwell, so I haven't been able to film these as regularly as I wanted to, but today I'm going to try and film as many as I can so that we can get this ball rolling. As always, I'm going to start off with the disclaimer that I am not these people's therapist. This is all information based off of edited content, so this could be just a impression that I'm getting from what I'm seeing and nothing else. I don't know these people personally. I've never met them or spoken to them to have their actual points of views. So these are just things that I'm picking up from the show that we're all watching. And they're just going to be hypothetical information that could be true or not true. So please do not take anything I say for gospel. These are just based on what I am seeing and what comes to mind when I do see these on the screens. So it kind of gives me an idea of the kinds of questions I would be asking if they were in my room and they were presenting these issues to me. Secondly, there are spoilers, as I have watched all the way up to the reunion. So all the information from this video will be from throughout the show up until the reunion. So if you have not watched the TV show, please pause here and go and watch it and then come back and we can discuss about it. So yeah, let's get into it, guys. The first couple I'm going to be talking about is Chris and Johnie. And as you know, if you've watched the show, you know there's so many love triangles. So many love triangles in this season. So Izzy will probably be mentioned in this video as well, just because it was a love triangle between Chris, Johnie, and Izzy. So let's get into it. First, we're going to start off with Chris. Chris, he is a very interesting character from the get-go. So from the beginning of the show, we see Chris in the men's lounge talking to the hosts about how people perceive him, and he says he's perceived as a playboy. So in this instance, it gave me a sense of, oh, okay, like I wouldn't have, like for me personally, I wouldn't have assumed he would be a playboy, just because he just seems like a regular guy, good looking guy, but I wouldn't have associated him with that. But then again, people might pick that up from him for some reason, so I kind of like let that go and just thought, okay, let's be open to that kind of information. So I was kind of looking for it whilst they were in the pods, but I couldn't really see much of that. Whilst he didn't have many interactions filmed with other people, with Johnie, I didn't see much playboy activities or questionings. But when we do see him talking to Johnie, we see him being quite open. We see him being quite open with her in the pods. Anyway, it's very hard because I think now that I'm watching it, like I see there's quite a pattern in the pods of people being comfortable and secure in themselves during the pods. But when you see them outside of the pods or when conflict comes in, we start to see a little bit more about their attachment styles. So I think you can't really tell their attachment styles too much in the pods with most of them, but yeah, it was interesting to watch and like pick that up throughout the show, because we saw that with JP as well. He was quite secure and able to express his feelings, but his, I think, was a little bit more towards the avoidant, because every time he started to talk about emotional things, he did present upset and so show some sort of emotional move, whereas Chris didn't seem like that. It felt a little bit more like he had an secure attachment in that sense. But when we go throughout the show, we start to see glimpses of his avoidance tendencies, and it shows up when there's conflict most of the time in his situation. So for example, when there was the argument at the barbecue with actually started before that, so like when Johnie broke up with him and he spoke to Izzy, he was trying to not be confrontational. It was more of a, oh, so what was your experience, what's my experience? It was very much trying to get an understanding, but he did not, when he got the information which was contradictory, he did not kind of want to have more conversations about that. He kind of just wanted to drop it and avoid having to go into having that conversation with Johnie. And then we also have another instance where Johnie, Izzy and Stacey are having an argument, and he just wants to kind of shut it down as quickly as possible. He agrees with he's kind of just trying to get himself out of any sort of mess. So like he's not agreeing with Izzy when he's saying bad things about Johnie, but he's also not defending Johnie fully. He's kind of trying to understand where he stands in the whole situation and how he's involved in the situation, and trying to remove himself out of it because he doesn't really see himself involved in that. And then we have the instance when we get to the reunion, which is the last time we see him, and we find out that he cheated on Johnie, but it could have been avoided by him having a conversation with Johnie about what had happened, because he ghosts her as well. So I think he has these things of avoiding conflict, avoiding any sort of thing that can derail him, so he tries to avoid it. So that's why I think he has attachment issues of the attachment style of an avoidant. But we can also link this to him being sexually assaulted, which he does discuss in the pods with Johnie, and he's very vulnerable in that moment and very open and honest about how things happened for him. So I am going to talk about sexual assault in this part of the video. So if you have any triggers or anything that's going to trigger you, please do take time out and pause from this part of the video and look after yourselves, because I don't want to trigger anyone. But we are going to be talking about sexual assault, but not in too much detail, just in relation to what Chris had mentioned in Love is Blind episodes. So yeah, so with this interaction with Johnie, we do see him talk about it very openly and honestly, and like it's very refreshing to someone who has experienced sexual assault, because a lot of the times with perceived ideas and social dynamics and social narratives, we have been programmed to think that victims of sexual assault have to be women, because of the human body's response to these things. But we can see in this case it was SA, which is sad to say, because like he has experienced something that he probably hasn't really had space to open up about, and this is probably the only space that he can feel freely open about it and talk about it to Johnie because he feels safe. So it's nice and refreshing to have that narrative being put out there and in a TV show that's so popular. So it can break down some stereotypes about what SA is and how it affects different people. In this case, we see him open up about it, and a lot of the times I think because because of the human response being a man has to be hard for there to be penetrative sex, we see that as, oh, okay, he wanted it because his body wanted it. He must have been aroused for it to happen. But there is like a human response. So like when you're in a threat mode, which SA can usually feel like that, your brain can shut down, the logical part of it can shut down, and your body goes into survival mode. So sometimes we see this with like the freeze, flight and fight response, but there's also another response which isn't really spoken about that much, but it is a response that happens quite often, which is called fawn, where you adapt to the situation to best protect yourself. So in this instance, we do see Chris's body respond to kind of shut down any other threats. So if I go along with this, I'm going to be safer than me trying to fight this, or me trying to run away from this, or me freezing from this, because my body would get hurt in the long term if I don't do this. For example, like some people freeze when they have sexual assault, which just stay still, don't do anything, and the body kind of like just shuts down. And some people will try and fight the person off. Some people will try and run away. These are all just natural responses for the body to try and survive, and the fawn is the same way in that sense as well. So his body was just kind of contracting to what was going on so that he could feel safe in that moment. So just because you're aroused, you're wet, you're hard, you are having sensations of like an orgasm or anything whilst you're experiencing SA, does not mean that you're not an SA victim. It just means that your body is responding to what's happening around it. So yeah, but you can still trap that response as a trauma response. Like you can still be stuck in that as a trauma. So some of Chris's behaviors, him being quite passive, him being quite like leaning towards peacemaker, can also be a result of him experiencing SA, and trying to understand like, okay, if I'm peaceful about something, if I'm on side with something, then if it seems like I'm on side with something, I'm less of a threat to someone else. So it might just be a personality trait that he's picked up since then to kind of keep himself safe, which has shown up in his relationship with Johnie. But yeah, that's how I kind of had a bit of a picture of who Chris was in the situation, because we didn't see much of him throughout the episode, but what we did see is him being vulnerable about his SA experience. We also see him opening up to Johnie about how he feels about her quite openly. He did tell her that he's really like looking forward to doing life with her. Johnie never really responded back to him, but there was always a sense of him giving more information about how he's feeling about the situation, which is what kind of threw me off about the whole attachment style, because he was quite open and quite secure, whereas as we've seen with JP, you can have the same kind of attachment style, but very depending on where you are on that spectrum, will depend on how you react to certain situations. So I think he's quite secure in himself naturally, but when it comes to conflict, he leans more towards the avoidance side. So I would say he's on that spectrum. He's in between secure and avoidant. And then we have Johnie. Johnie is a very interesting character, and to this day I still can't work out her completely with the information that we've been given up from the beginning of the episodes all the way to the reunion. There is some sort of disconnect with her that I can't place my finger on, but there are signs of an anxious attachment style, and also the need to be wanted or needed in her life. So that's kind of given me some like information about her and how she reacts in relationships. We do see a little bit more about her past relationships because she does talk about it in the pods with both Chris and Izzy. But she's very but we don't have much more information other than what she's given, which kind of gives us a little bit of context, but not enough for us to make a full understanding of what's going on with her. But she seems like someone who is a bit of a fixer, someone who takes on projects because she feels like this person is always going to want me because I've helped them. We see this in the case with her dating an addict in her previous relationships and saying that was like her greatest love. And we also see it when she's speaking to Izzy as well. They kind of have this relationship where her and Izzy have this relationship which is based off of trauma. So we have Izzy talking about how he was engaged before. We have Johnie talking about how she was married before, so they connect on that level. And then we also have the instance of him, Izzy talking about feeling isolated from being a Jehovah's Witness from school activities and stuff like that. So we see her wanting to always save and wanting to always be there for someone. But there's also a sense of lack of worth with that, because there's always a chase of I have to do something in order for me to be loved back. And I have to be able to improve someone for me to be loved back. Like I need to be able to show something for it. We see a lot of emotional conversations with her and Izzy. So we do see that trauma bond happening because they have similar issues that they're working through with the abandonment issues and with abandonment issues with the lost engagement and the ending of the marriage, and also with the addiction issues on Johnny's side, Johnny's ex's side. So there's always this high and low emotions, and they do like from the videos we know that they do talk about logical things, but a lot of their conversations are based on emotions and how they're feeling about situations and how situations made them feel. So we also have Izzy in that situation wanting to belong to something. So he wants to feel like, he mentions how he wants to have Christmas with the whole family and know that like he's part of something. But then Johnie also wants to fix that by offering, oh, you can have Christmas with my family. So there's always this transactional thing happening between the two of them, which I think Johnie liked because she wants to be needed, she wants to be liked. So that part of her was being like conversed into that relationship. I don't really know why Izzy didn't pick her, but I think it was, in the end he did say it was just that he felt like a better connection with Stacey. But I think there's also the fact that he didn't really, I don't know what it was, but I think from that, when he picked Stacey over her, that self-worth that she was craving for kind of just imploded, and she really felt it, and she knew, oh God, I've made a mistake. I should have just stuck with Chris, which was she calls the safer option. And sometimes a lot of people who are used to this avoidant, anxious style tend to go for the highs and lows because they think passion is a result of the highs and lows of relationship, because there's so many emotions in it and it's very high in the beginning. That must be love, and that must be how I should be feeling, because society really does play that narrative of you have to have the ups and downs in order to get the man or get the woman, and there has to be that passion in the relationship, and it has to be a little bit toxic for it to work, which really isn't the right way. If you're in a secure relationship, in a relationship with a secure individual, a lot of the time those ups and downs don't happen. There's very much black and white. This is how I feel, this is how it looks like. How do you feel about it? How should we go about it? There's a lot of communication, a lot of clarity. Whereas with anxious and avoidant types, there tends to be the ambiguous parts of the relationship where there's not much communicated, which causes the ups and downs to happen quite often. And with Johnie, we see her trying to chase that because she feels like that's more passionate, that's more love. And that's why she broke up with Chris in the first place. And when she does break up with Chris does have a moment of really just being with his feelings in the pods. He doesn't really go back to the into the lounge with the lads and start talking about it a little bit more. He does do that, but it's in his initial reaction is to sit with his own emotions within the pods to kind of gather himself and have his moment. And Johnny's response is to just get out as quickly as possible. So she might even have a disorganized attachment style as well. But it's hard to tell because we only have so much information, and it's very little information that we do have about the two of them. That she made up her mind that Izzy was going to be her match, because she felt passionate, but she hadn't received that much validation from Izzy as well to say that she was his one. So I think when she announced to Izzy that she had broken off with Chris, and Chris had confirmed that Izzy had confirmed to her that Chris was upset in the lounge. She kind of like regathered herself and was like, oh crap, like I made a mistake. Not that I've made a mistake, but I feel bad for cutting it off so quickly with him. But after that, Izzy doesn't reassure her either about where he stands with the relationship, because he still has Stacey, but on the other side. So yeah, it's a very interesting dynamic between the two, between Izzy and Johnie. And I think with Johnie being in this lover triangle, it gave us a little bit more context about Johnie than it did about Chris. But Chris and Johnny's relationship ends because Chris cheats on Johnie, which we didn't see coming from the beginning, but when it does happen, you just kind of like, oh my gosh, what happened? But it's also nice to see that they're both friends at the end, because Chris apologizes for how everything played out, and he takes full accountability for how it affects him. Whereas with Johnie, throughout the season, we don't really see much accountability from her. So I think she does try to hide by doing things for people, rather than her taking responsibility for what she has done. Like, she tries to like fix it by doing things. So that's why I think the lack of worth is fixed for her in the fixing phases of relationships, which is a very interesting concept that I've kind of seen. But with the two of them, I think if they had had communication over time and tried to work things out, it would have been a decent couple match. But we can see that they both are still very much in their traumas and haven't fully explored and expressed them or spoken to people about it to kind of understand why they behave the way they do, because she hasn't really taken accountability for dating people who had addiction issues. She kind of she takes part accountability by saying I picked them, but really she hasn't taken much accountability because there isn't much else that she has evaluated by how she contributed to those relationships. So it's really just admitted that she knew that that her partner had issues, but she didn't want to address those issues. So the narrative was kind of fixed for her in those situations. But yeah, this couple was a very interesting couple to kind of review. Though we didn't have much information about them, we have enough information to know that their main needs is Chris wants to keep the peace. He's quite a peacemaker. And then we also understand that Johnie is more of a needs to be her need is to be wanted. So understanding those things, I think sometimes when we are individuals and we know what our need is, we can try to work on it with our therapists, with support groups, to try to understand where that need has come from and how we can break down those narratives. And I think the more we work on those needs, the more you understand yourself and pick up those patterns that you have been showing within your life, and try and break them down, because it seems like the two of them are still stuck in those cycles of having to kind of get out of it is working. But we know towards the end that both of them are in relationships now. So maybe they have worked from it, and watching the show has also given them more information about themselves that they can use to improve their current relationships, which we're all here for. We all love a happy ending. We all love for people to enjoy getting to know themselves a little bit more so that they're better within their relationships. And that's what we do here. We're just trying to learn a little bit more about ourselves, guys. So let's give grace to all the individuals on the shows that don't show up the way that we would show up, and just try and learn from them, really. But that's the end of this episode, guys. And I'm really enjoying this part of Love Learns and just chatting to you guys in the comments. And thanks to those who did comment in the last Love is Blind video. I really enjoyed interacting with you guys. So please look out for more videos, and yeah, please continue to like, comment and subscribe so that we can continue building this platform and having a community to talk about love and relationships with. So thank you so much, guys. Have a lovely day, and I will speak to you soon. Bye.